The delegate to my left was already laughing before I finished introducing myself. I didn't catch the exact translation. The Velthrani diplomatic channel runs about a half-second behind, but the gist was something like they sent clerk. The chamber thought that was very funny. There were perhaps 40 of them arranged in the tiered semicircle, all of them in formal house colors, and the laughter moved through the tiers like a wave rolling up a beach. Unhurried, enjoying itself, I set my document case on the table and waited for it to finish. My name is Dara Osi. At the time of the Velthrani Conclave session I am about to describe, I held the rank of 3rd attaché, Trade Division, under Ambassador Priya Nath, who was, as the Velthrani had made a point of noting in their pre-session brief, not present. Neither was anyone from the Fleet Liaison Office, nor the Colonial Economic Board, nor any of the 7 other bodies the Velthrani had apparently expected to send representatives. Humanity had sent me. I had a document case, a translation earpiece, and a 2-page proposal. The delegate who'd laughed, Senior Convener Rath, I learn his name shortly, leaned across the table and asked through the channel whether I understood the purpose of a conclave session, whether my government understood, whether perhaps there had been a scheduling error and the actual human delegation was on its way. I told him there was no error. He asked if I was empowered to negotiate binding trade terms on behalf of the Terran Compact. I said I was. He looked at the 2-page document I'd slid across the table, then looked at me, then looked at his colleagues in the upper tiers. Whatever expression he made, 3 of them laughed again. I find I don't mind being laughed at in rooms like that. I've been in enough of them. The laughter is useful, actually. It tells you exactly where the other party's attention is, and where it isn't. Rath's attention was on performing contempt for the gallery. It was not on the document. That was fine. It would get there. The session formally opened. The Velthrani position was, in summary, humanity's fragmented political structure made it an unreliable trade partner. Its colonial reach was overextended. Its military posture in the Karath corridor was, quote, gestural. And the terms of any new agreement would therefore reflect the correct balance of leverage, which did not favor the Terran Compact. They had a counter-proposal of their own 47 pages, which a junior aide slid across to me with what I can only describe as a performative. Thud, I thanked them and set it aside. Rath's eyes narrowed a little at that first sign. I said that humanity appreciated the conclave's thorough preparation, and that I had one question before we proceeded. I asked whether the session's pre-ratified procedural terms had been reviewed by conclave legal. He said of course they had. Standard session framework, signed by both parties before I'd walked in the door. I nodded, and I asked him to turn to page 2 of my proposal. He didn't move immediately. He was still in performance mode. There was a murmur from the upper tiers, a ripple of what I can only call anticipatory amusement, the sound of an audience waiting for a punchline they already knew. He made a small gesture, the Velthrani equivalent of a sigh, and turned to page 2, with the deliberate slowness of someone who has decided the whole exercise is beneath them. I watched him read. Page 2 was 11 lines. It referenced by exact clause number, for 7s, of the session's pre-ratified procedural framework, which he had just confirmed was signed by both parties. Article 7A established that any trade discussion conducted under conclave auspices and touching on corridor access rights was subject to the Karath Passage Accord's binding arbitration schedule, which the Velthrani themselves had drafted and ratified 4 years prior, specifically to prevent unilateral renegotiation by smaller parties. My 2-page proposal didn't ask for anything. It confirmed, precise legal language, that we were now inside the Accord's framework, that the session constituted formal invocation of that framework, and that the 47-page counter-proposal Rath had just handed me could not be legally enacted without independent arbitration, a process that ran, on average, 31 months. The Velthrani had written the Accord to protect their corridor from human expansion. It had never occurred to them that we might use it to freeze their counterterms instead. Rath read the 11 lines twice. I know because I watched his eyes track back to the top. The upper tiers had gone quiet. Not the polite quiet of people paying attention. It's the specific quiet of a room that has just understood something and is not happy about it. He looked up at me. The performance was gone. This was a different expression. Careful, recalibrating. The face of someone who has picked up an object expecting one weight and found another, he asked, very evenly when we had drafted this. I said the proposal had been prepared over the past 18 months. In consulting with Compact Legal and the Karath Accord Arbitration Secretariat, who had confirmed the procedural interpretation in writing, he asked why Ambassador Nath had not attended. I said the ambassador had other commitments. I was fully empowered.
Anything in the proposal he'd like clarified?
There was a long pause. In the upper tiers, 2 of the delegates were conferring in low tones. A third had pulled up something on his session tablet. I assumed Conclave Legal, running the same Shrekrath, was running in his head. The junior aide who delivered the 40 legions was very still. It is a particular kind of silence when a room full of people have been laughing and then stop. There's a texture to it. I've heard it describes the sound of understanding arriving somewhere it wasn't expected. I find it one of the more satisfying sounds in diplomatic work. Rath set the document down. He asked, in a tone that had shed all its earlier warmth, whether I would be amenable to a short recess. I said, of course. I told him to take whatever time he needed. I told him there was no hurry at all. I meant it. We had 31 months if he wanted them. He didn't find that funny. But then, it wasn't really meant for him.